Today's session, we're going to have Hernan Fernandez from Angel Ventures in Mexico as our first guest. Hernan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Hermana. Thank you for the invitation. Very excited to join.
All right. Well, let's get to know you and let's get to know Angel Ventures Mexico. Tell us about the fund. Tell us about your activities. Where do you invest? What size funds do you run? And let's just get you introduced to our audience.
Absolutely happy to. So our story actually starts off in 2008. Me and my partner at the time, we were in MIT, and we just got completely sucked into the amazing venture ecosystem that goes on there.
And what prompted you to get going with this? Were you studying at MIT in 2008?
Yes, I was studying at MIT between 2005 and 2007, and
okay.
there basically, engaged with the venture mentoring ecosystem and participated in the business plan competitions, etc. So it was just such a dynamic ecosystem that I completely and absolutely fell in love with. I actually started helping Mexican entrepreneurs raise some money or linking them to MIT, etc. And I just love being part of that. Then in 2007, I came back to Mexico. I took a job in consulting, and I was a miserable consultant, I must say. And I still had I had been receiving emails of founders or even some investors, and hey, I would like to see more pipeline, etc. So basically, I decided to start the first angel investment in Mexico. That's why our names. So between 2008 and
go ahead, 2000. When did you start Angel Ventures?
2008. And
2008.
We run the Angel Network exclusively from 2008 to 2013. And in 2013, we raised our first fund. So it was a $20 million fund. We had 56 limited partners. It was 3 institutional investors, the Inter-American Development Bank and the Mexican Development Bank, and 53, of our first crop of angel investors that believed in the project. That was a pretty successful fund. We had some follow-on investments by, GA, SoftBank, Temasek, and trying to really recreate a good thesis in Mexico. We were in the middle of the fintech wave, which was absolutely amazing. We had some very successful fintech companies coming from that maiden fund. And now we manage our second fund, which is a fund for the Pacific Alliance countries of Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and Peru. We feel it's a great untapped opportunity. These 4 countries, which, they're very closely aligned together, they have 230 million people and an economy of $2.2 trillion U.S. So it's larger than Brazil. It's actually larger than Canada in terms of economy and, in terms of population, of course. There's so much to be done here. We're big fans of comparable markets. So we travel extensively through other countries like India or Southeast Asia, Middle East, Northern Africa, and we just see the trends that we're seeing right now, which I think we're on the brink of something in terms of global emerging marketplace.
Global entrepreneurship, which is absolutely our mission as well. So let me ask you a few questions just to understand the dynamics of the Mexican ecosystem. You said you started in 2008 with the Angel Network in Mexico. I presume that at that point you moved from Cambridge to Mexico, yes?
That is correct.
So who are these angel investors? Does that include technology investors, or is it more, other industries, people who have made money in other industries and are interested in investing in technology?
So, Amanda, that's an amazing question. You're spot on, because we learned the hard way that angel investors are so different to the ones that you will find in the U.S., Europe, or developed economies. Whereas in the U.S. or Europe, 80% of angel investors have been successful entrepreneurs. In Mexico and in Latin America, that's certainly not the case. So the pockets of money are actually more tied to older money. It's people that have been wealthy all their lives, and probably their fathers and grandfathers have been wealthy as well. But what we found was that there's an emerging trend of successful businessmen, right? I'm talking about the C-suite levels, the CEOs, CTOs, McKinsey partners, the Goldman Sachs employees, that we're starting to see entrepreneurs as an investment opportunity. So you go from real estate to even some franchises, etc. And, in 2008, for the first time, we started seeing that many year-end bonuses and things like that were going towards entrepreneurs, and we saw it as a fascinating trend. Obviously, this has to do a lot with age. We're talking people between 25 to 45 maybe at their core. And what we saw, which was an opportunity for a fund, and our first fund was actually a co-investment fund, was that the tickets were significantly smaller from what you would see in an angel in the U.S. But the key insight was that this was actually smart capital, and that was actually locking. So by having the country manager for Google or the country manager for Pfizer, we were able now to finally do some smart investments in many of these verticals. So our job at that point in time, and it still is, it's to empower these individuals to become successful investors. And Angel Ventures has actually produced funds that co-invest with these individuals. We leverage many of these individuals and their expertise into our fund screening and sourcing and investment processes. And we perceive ourselves as a real-time, like co-investment mechanism of sorts to fund the best entrepreneurs that we can find in our countries.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay, so now you said you invest in Mexico, Chile, Peru, and Colombia. And are the angel investors also from all four countries, or are they all Mexican investors?
No, actually, we have a very broad base of angel investors. We have 15 nationalities represented throughout LPs and our angel base. We have many investors from the U.S., some from Canada. I would say the core is certainly Mexico and Colombia. It might be like a close second. Some guys from Peru, some from Chile, Guatemala. But we even have, Germany, Spain, Japan, Thailand, Australia. So it's interesting. Many times it's really.
And how did that come together? You probably know this. I'm also an MIT alumni. Were you able to leverage the MIT alumni network?
Oh, absolutely. Think about doing sometimes every now and then we get some deep companies that we have no idea how to deal with them, right? So Mexico actually it's a pretty interesting country in terms of robotics. So we had no idea how to actually engage with the proper robotics company. We could probably do our stuff in e-commerce or fintech, etc. But when we actually see things that they're way above our league, we basically do things first, try to tap into the MIT network and see who can help us, do a better job at giving like a fairness opinion to that entrepreneur and linking them to that network. And in these particular investments, when it concerns like deep tech, we rather play second fiddle and possibly being more like a follow-on investor. Because again, deep tech is a global play, and I think in what we can be really good and relevant is more in business model plays that are more suited to our countries.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about some of the investments you've made. And in particular, as you describe these investments and the case studies, so to speak, talk about how did you find them, what state did you find them, and what was it about these companies that compelled you to write the check?
Well, it's interesting. I think that coming back from to what's the story behind, I love good storytelling, and I must say, that the best part of being in this job is, being with the most uber optimistic people out there, which are many times by definition entrepreneurs. So I love asking entrepreneurs the question like, how and why did you get into this industry, right? And if you can see like even at certain extent like a personal connection, it's beautiful. For example, Adolfo Babat, he's also an MIT alum, by the way. He's the founder of Clip. I would say it's like the most successful Mexican company today, and it's on its route to become a unicorn. It's got investment by SoftBank and by GA and some other serious guys, and it's now, overtaking most banks in Mexico. And Adolfo used to work for PayPal, and he was like developing a product, and he felt that, there was like something missing. So he worked, in a very world-class company trying to develop products, but he knew that he didn't have like the enough empowerment to actually make something that worked for Mexico. So he quit PayPal. He was bankrolled by his co-founder at the time and another employee, and they had like a beautiful story together of how to create like a big company in Mexico. And again, if you ask Adolfo, you knew from day one that Adolfo was passionate about why payments were so bad in Mexico and they were so miserable. And at the time, I had no idea if Adolfo was going to be successful or not, but I knew that he was passionate about what he was building, and that was a pretty good chance we took. And on the other hand, many times we see, like a really good salesperson, with a good PowerPoint presentation and some carnivals, and you just sense that he's now probably, I don't know, selling to you e-commerce for babies. And if he doesn't get funded, actually this has happened to us before, in 6 months he's going to be raising, an e-commerce for pets. So you kind of like think where's the passion into that, and if things go sour, there's not that stickiness factor that you would like to see in an entrepreneur. So we try to make the best assessment that we can in terms of grit and determination of the entrepreneur. Obviously, besides the size of the market and the competitive dynamics, regulation, etc., which are the usual. But I would say like my special take is on the entrepreneur's personal background story. It's something that's very critical for us.
And is fintech a sector that you have invested more in? Is it a big trend in Mexico as well? It is globally a big trend right now.
Yes, fintech. We were lucky enough to be in the middle of the fintech way. Actually, when we designed the fund back in 2013, we had no idea we were going to see fintech deals. But when we started seeing the trends that we were seeing, technology players adapting to financial markets, etc., okay, guys, we need to build a proper, fintech capacity to analyze these deals. So yeah, we invested in Clip, we invested in Questlr, we invested out of our first fund, which was 21 companies. 6 of them are into the fintech space, and 2 of the top performers are fintechs. So now with our second fund, we're also doing fintech. We really like it. Mexican banks are just so obviously they have been getting better all the time. They're just so expensive, and they don't get many times consumer. I just feel that it's a right time to disrupt, and the Mexican government has been quite supportive, and actually Mexico became the first country to enact a proper fintech law in the world. So in some things we can be innovative, and certainly that was the one of the first. So yeah, fintech is great. Mobility, it's one that for all kind of countries is great. And for example, I would love to share this on one mobility investment that we made. So we invested in a company called Urban in Mexico, which is a B2C/B2B2C mobility play to take people from their house to their workplace, etc. And we did a similar in.
Did we lose Hernan? Maureen, can you hear Hernan? I cannot hear him anymore. So is it I who lost him, or everybody lost his audio? Okay, we all lost his audio. All right. In that case, I think I'm going to go to Maureen. I'm going to let you work with Hernan.
Hello, Hernan.
Here we go. Yes, we lost you, Hernan.
Yes, the call dropped. So just to finalize that idea, we invested into these 2 companies that are doing amazing things in mobility, and we went to India and met with the shuttle team. We love that company. We actually met with investors of Swivel from Egypt and from Volt in Turkey, and what we're seeing it's actually quite interesting in the sense that this is a pure emerging markets play because actually at the time there was a company called Chariot that was acquired by Ford, but they were solving a very not a very important problem in developed countries, right? Because these companies deal with mobility for workforce, and if you try to do this in Boston or in San Francisco, public transportation works quite well. Financing for cars is very cheap, and it's not something that you actually need to work on. Whereas in places like India or Delhi or Mexico City or Sao Paulo, Bogota, you have all these people that are between public transportation that sometimes can be bad or very inefficient, and the best next alternative is something like Uber Pool. So there's so much opportunities to innovate in that space that I'm very confident that the first unicorn that we're going to see in that space is probably going to be either Swivel in Egypt, Mina, or Shuttle. But I think that the Latin American components into that are also going to be very dominant. So we're very, very hyped on what we can build as a pure emerging markets play, and we're going to see more and more this coming. And the trends, cash on delivery. It's something that even Amazon had to adapt for cash on delivery in Mexico, which Mexico, by the way, is their fastest market to grow to 1 billion in sales anywhere in the world. Uber, if you saw Uber's numbers, 28% of Uber's revenues come from Latin America. So Latin America has the consumers, is growing in terms of purchasing power.
Very digital consumer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was kind of left out from the global investment scene. And then, a few months ago, SoftBank committed $5 billion to the region, and we're starting to see more and more activity from the Sequoias, the Accels, et cetera, of the world. So it's certainly an interesting place to be right now.
Very interesting. Okay, cool. Now, would you say the bulk of your portfolio is B2C?
Good question. I would say it's split. I will tilt it more towards B2C, yes, but we do have a few B2B plays as well. I would say fintech is pretty big. We have done some things in e-commerce and learned some hard lessons in the way. Some of them are still doing okay. Mobility, I think, has picked up in terms of what we do. Health and health-related opportunities, all the way from platforms to some medical devices. And certainly some B2B plays in logistics, and I actually have invested in a very interesting Korean beauty company that's now expanding to Latin America.
Okay, interesting. A lot of the B2C trends that you are talking about are trends that are big in India as well. We cover India very extensively, and have for a long time. The Indian B2C market is more advanced, I think, than Latin America, but it's also a lot of these trends that you're talking about are very active trends in India as well. And I think that the commonality across all this is that the consumer logistics part is very broken in most of the emerging markets, right? So there's a lot of logistics-oriented stuff that needs to get built, and venture is a perfect way to build that. A lot of fintech doesn't exist, right? There's the financial services sector is very immature. The healthcare sector is very immature. Retail, organized retail is very immature even. It's, very fragmented retail. All of these are trends, and everything that you talked about, cash on delivery is a big trend in India as well. And so I think the emerging markets have certain commonalities. So I guess the question that I would put to you is, have you studied what is different?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We actually did our second trip to Bangalore a couple of months ago, and it feels like a playground. The energy there, it's amazing. I think Indians are very good, and obviously they have a way more developed financing ecosystem. We were actually, it's funny, but we got interviewed by your story. Shraddha was fantastic. And we met with so many companies, very open in terms of, we're focused in India because it's a huge market, it's growing so fast. But yeah, you have many of the things that we see prevalent in Latin America, right? Mega cities, the how you actually capture into those consumers, and these hacks that Indians have been able to make are something that we are keen on seeing how that develops into Latin America. You have places like things like social commerce, right? Like the whole Avon Cosmetics catalog that is very prevalent in Latin America as well, and you have people in their by hours and office hours just selling to you every shoes or whatever, and Indians have adapted that towards technology and cash on delivery. It's also a very common one. And again, it's like these local hacks that happen into developing economies that I think Indians do very well. So yeah, I think that certainly India, where it stands today, it's a very interesting model for Latin America. I will actually say much more than China. Southeast Asia, it also has some pretty interesting companies. Mainly, we have seen some amazing companies in Vietnam. We have seen great things also in Indonesia. But yeah, India, I think, has a very big concentration of that. And Bangalore, it's a great place to visit for that sense.
Well, I think the difference between India and Latin America is that India has this very deep technology industry because it served as like the back office of American technology companies and IT departments of large companies for so long, for good 2-3 decades, and it developed a huge mass of very tech-savvy people. So I think that is one of the reasons why the B2B and the deep tech side of India is also quite well developed at this point and is developing even more and very well. That I don't think is true about Latin America. The Latin American market is more B2C opportunities, as well as I think there are B2B opportunities in Latin America as well, but it's not as much deep tech. It's more, more business models and inefficiencies that are being addressed through venture.
You're spot on. I think India has the business model approach, but you're spot on in saying that it's a deep tech. And I will claim that, yes, unfortunately, I don't think Latin America is deep tech. I'll say 2 reasons. Obviously, I don't think that we had that long-standing, tradition like India has had of, capturing so much tech and working for so much tech companies and then relocating to India and being able to push for that. I would say there are some pockets that we see very promising, like Guadalajara in Mexico has some of the elements that we feel very confident about, and particularly there, you have the Intel and the Microsoft, and you have these nearshoring capabilities that Silicon Valley is using a lot. So I will be very bullish on Guadalajara in the years to come. You have like places like Santiago, you have places like Medellin. So I think there's certain cities, but obviously not to a certain extent to a critical mass that India has achieved for sure. And the other thing that I really like is, the whole financing thing. If you come to think about it, in the top tier U.S. VC funds, there's not many Latins. There's very few Mexicans. Whereas India has a critical mass, right? So
absolutely.
That really helps a lot in terms of funding, and
helps a lot. Helps a lot. I think that the India Silicon Valley bridge has been very powerful and it helps a lot. I don't think that similar Silicon Valley Latin America bridge has been as strong, or that level of presence of Latin Americans in the higher echelons of Silicon Valley just doesn't exist yet. Anyway. So very interesting.
And the other thing that I will mention quickly there is, the U.S. proximity is a blessing in disguise, because, think about this. If you're like a Mexican, scientist doing the deep tech, $350 and something crazy like, 2,000 flights per day or something. The statistics are amazing. And you're in the U.S. and there's probably 25 daily flights from Silicon Valley to anywhere in Mexico. So the connectivity is just enormous. So I'm pretty sure that the U.S. is capturing a lot of that, Latin American or particularly Mexican talent, and it's something that kind of like just stays there and matures there, which, by the way, it makes sense if you're doing something in deep tech. I'm not encouraging any Mexican scientists to actually just do it in Mexico if it's a global play, but it's just the way it is.
How relevant do you think is Silicon Valley to the B2C side of the Mexican venture ecosystem, because you're catering to, well, not just Mexican, Latin American, Mexico, Peru, Chile, Colombia, the market that you've talked about. If you're doing B2C, catering to those markets, how relevant is Silicon Valley for you?
I think it's growing in terms of relevance. It's kind of, I wouldn't like to use the word frustrating, but I really wish that Silicon Valley took a little bit more time to understand Latin America. I have seen, many entrepreneurs with very, heartbreaking emails going something like, well, we always go for the big market, and for us, the big market is Brazil. And it makes sense. Brazil has the scale, etc. And then from Brazil, we'll try to pursue like a global Latin American play and have the companies expand and everything. That's something really crazy. That's, like saying, yeah, we'll go probably to China, and China is in Asia, and, from China, we'll probably go to other markets. It doesn't make any sense. And actually, not against Brazilian companies. I think they're fantastic entrepreneurs out there. But Brazilians have been very bad at scaling companies outside of Brazil. And I will actually there, how many companies have actually successfully scaled from Brazil into Latin America? I could probably think of one. I mean, Nubank now, as a challenger bank, has a new opportunity and a lot of money to actually try that. But, I think that Latin America has to be seen in a different way. And now obviously Rappi and what you mentioned with last mile logistics, it's certainly a hot segment in Latin America, and Rappi just raised $1 billion from SoftBank just towards that particular vertical. But the thing is, there's also a big perception of insecurity, right? Yeah, Mexico, of course, the Chapo, drug wars. We all know that. But the thing is, if you actually go to Mexico City and Guadalajara, you're statistically more safe than even some cities in the U.S., like, unfortunately, Chicago nowadays. Needless to say
Hernan, I think what you're saying is correct, that there is not a lot of awareness, but I'm even asking something a little more fundamental. Do you need Silicon Valley to be successful in what you're trying to do, is building the B2C venture ecosystem? SoftBank is interested. SoftBank is not Silicon Valley. SoftBank is a Japanese company with Middle Eastern money. So, they're interested in a big market. They understand that Mexico and Latin America is a big market, and they're willing to work with you. Probably Tiger Global wants to work with you. Probably Naspers wants to work with you. These are the emerging market venture funds that are interested in these bigger emerging markets, and I imagine all of them are interested in working with you. So what do you need Silicon Valley for?
That's actually a great point. And I will tell you this. Yes, we actually have worked with Temasek, with GA, and
exactly.
And it's happening. But I will say this, particularly to Mexico. I was part of the NAFTA generation. This is something interesting to understand. I was part of the the whole thing where the U.S. has been as a key ally or something. So I don't know. It's kind of like I went to school in the U.S. I have like so many U.S. friends. So I would love to see Silicon Valley, open a little bit more towards like Latin America and Mexico and understand the fundamentals. Yeah, is Mexico dangerous? Is yes. If you go to Reynosa,
when are you going to be in Silicon Valley next time?
Oh, I go there at least once every 3 months and meet with fantastic people and trying to spread the good word and hopefully building those bridges. And I agree. I think that in terms of money-wise and good story to tell, there's now very relevant players like SoftBank that, they have been amazing to some of these companies. But I will not lose hope of Silicon Valley. I just hope that next time that they're trying to fund something that, in my humble opinion, might be as trivial as getting the third app for on-demand ballet service, why don't they take something more fundamental that can change people's life, like, urban mobility in packed cities where you really need to solve a problem. I probably would not lose my faith in Silicon Valley in the short term, but it's a labor of love.
Well, next time you come, give me a buzz, and we'll have coffee and chat more.
I will certainly look forward to that, Hernan.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your perspective. I'm a huge fan of Latin America. I've, spent time in Latin America. I love Latin America, and I'm really thrilled to see, all the things that are happening. We actually keep in touch with a number of investors in Latin America, and I worked very closely with Mercado Libre a long time ago.
Oh, nice.
So
no, definitely, by all means, the invitation then extends the other way. The next time you come this part of the river or the wall, yes, please ping us, and we'll be happy to take you out for some proper tacos and meet some pretty interesting people.
All right. Take care, Hernan. Thank you for participating today. Very interesting
perspective.
Thank you,
Romana. It was lovely. No, thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day, Romana.